Okay, so I think the, well, hi, everybody, I'm Steve, from Natural Fiber Welding. I think the best thing to do here is of course, we do have a standard investor pitch deck. I will plan to go through that deck, maybe go through it, a bit quickly. I guess because many people might be watching a recording, it won't be possible to do as much Q&A as we might like, but I'll certainly encourage everybody on the call to jump in with questions. I also will give an update right here at the outset of the call. This being recorded on Thursday, October 13th. Earlier this week, NFW signed a term sheet with a lead investor for our bridge round. And so we are, Nathan and Kip, I can give you guys a bunch more details, but we are actively in with a signed term sheet, looking to be closing initial close within 30 to 45 days of two days ago or 3 days ago. And I can certainly later in the call, or Nathan, Kip, if you guys would rather me jump straight into that, I'm happy to talk to you about the high level terms in our term sheet, and happy to talk about sort of logistics of how we intend to get to close of this next round. So wanted to make sure and open with that news. Any preference, Kip? You want me to
I guess I would say, yeah, maybe just jump into the terms real quick and then, or kind of overview, and maybe I know there was some talk about the targeted amount you're trying to raise locally, and those sorts of things would be helpful.
Yeah. So Nathan, sorry, I think Kip and Nathan and everyone, for context, let me say, the Series B, which we closed, the Series B3, which we closed earlier this year in the spring, had a post-money valuation of 310. The instrument we're using right now is back to a convertible debt instrument. The convertible debt in the term sheet says 25 million, though all parties, including the lead investor and our board and management, agree that if there's an opportunity to raise 30 million, we will do so. And I'll say that I do expect there's already very, very strong interest from a number of people we've been working with. I expect we will be fully, if not significantly, oversubscribed at 30 million. But in the term sheet, if you review the term sheet, it says 25. The conversion rate, the conversion discount rate is 15%, presuming there to be a qualified financing event before September 30th of 2023. 15%. After September 30, 2023, the discount rate increases to 20%. The cap, sorry, the valuation cap on the note is 400 million. So best case, of course, for NFW is that we raise high enough above 400 million that we convert at that cap, in which case it certainly is an up round. I'll note that NFW has heard from many of our investors what I'm sure many of you are aware of, which is that this is a very difficult market to raise capital. Many companies, even companies doing fine, doing well, are doing down rounds right now. NFW is doing convertible. The logic on that is, of course, it provides significant upside for the investor, presuming that we are successful and raise a significant higher price in our C. There's the discount than the $400 million cap. And yet we feel comfortable with this not being a down round, given the current market environment. I'll give you a few of the milestones that we've hit since the B, and I think you'll see why management has never, we've been approached by investors suggesting a down round, and we've never given any serious consideration to such a thing, given the strength of our milestones since the B was closed. Okay, so 15% discount can step up to 20% if we don't raise by September 30 of 23, $400 million cap. A qualified financing, which would trigger the automatic conversion, is a $75 million Series C. The maturity date on the note is 24 months after first close. So, call first close sometime in November. Maturity is 24 months from then. As I said, we expect first close in 30 to 45. We do have language for an optional conversion at the investor's option if we do a priced round that does not exceed the $75 million qualified financing threshold. I think that's probably the most significant terms. I can make available to Nathan and Kip the signed term sheet, and for those who are interested to review the signed term sheet, we can give the details out, but that's the high level where we are. Oh, Kip, sorry, to one other thing you said. We had considered whether or not the timeliness of whether or not we'd be able to get this lead signed. And so we had talked about how important it might be, or how it might be a really good opportunity for us NFW and CIA and other sort of local Peoria investors to put together a sort of a quasi lead as CIA. And then, so we've talked to some of the group here, could we put together $3 to $5 million and how that might be extremely helpful to NFW continuing to keep momentum with the current term sheet signed by a lead. Let me also tell you more about the lead in a second. With the current term sheet signed by the lead, I don't think that's so important. I think everybody should invest or should propose the amount they want to invest. Let me also say that while CIA certainly has the pro rata rights, we do expect the round to be oversubscribed. So it will be important for everybody to give us their indications soon. And then we'll make sure that, we allocate it as best we can. Our lead investor is AIM. AIM is already on our cap table. They were a $5 million investor in our Series B3. They are not a board observer. They came in very, very late in the process of our B3, but have actually been very active with management and very supportive of the company since our B3. So yeah, it's good to have a term sheet, I guess I'll say, coming from an insider who knows us well and has gotten to know us quite well. They came late to the diligence process on the B3, but made a quick decision to invest then are now following on with this lead term sheet. So maybe I'll see if there are any questions on the current deal. And if not, I'll be happy to go into the NFW pitch presentation. Nathan, happy to. 20. And again, I said 25 to 30, and the total pipeline is much, much more than that. So with the lead investor and then others who we've been working with closely, and she also, the lead investor, has also been working this. We have over 20 already more or less committed. Greg Smith and Evolution VC Partners, who was the lead on our B3, is indicating a likelihood to put more than another 5 in as well. So I think there's good momentum and this thing should get done very quickly. And I'll just say that's been our goal since we started this fundraising process, to not spend a ton of time fundraising and not try to maximize a monster Series C round given the environment, but to put enough additional capital on the bank to give the company very high confidence to make it all the way through 2023. With a nice tailwind. I think we're doing it as a reaction. I've called it before a mandate to raise, given the momentum we have in the market and some of our customer milestones and customer engagements. Our customers are asking us to scale faster, go faster, develop more materials faster. But that was, in light of such a challenging and uncertain economic environment, that seemed like a risky thing to do without bringing in a bit more capital. So 25 to 30 million, again, relative to our Series B3 that we closed in the spring, which was 85 million. It's a smaller boost, you could say, of capital to make sure that our balance sheet stays really healthy into our Series C. So hopefully that's a little bit of logic on why we're raising, and I already went through the terms that we're raising with. Okay.
Steve, did you say you have commitments around or north of 20? Okay.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be in your slides, but you said the qualifying would be a 75 million. Do you have a expected C amount that you're potentially targeting?
Yeah, so the 20 is committed against the 25 to 30 of this
Right.
convertible note.
Sure.
The
Yep.
qualifying of the C at 75 is in the C. If we raise 75 or more, it automatically converts this note
Yep.
into those shares. What's the round size? We don't know exactly, Kip, but I suspect it will be north of 100. I could say like 150 plus or minus.
Okay.
Is where we would expect that to be. I feel comfortable that 75 is a good threshold. One other piece of context, we have, I need to be careful because I know we're not all under NDA. We have a couple of very large customers, or I could include a third very large customer who have indicated in the past the possibility of putting capital into the company that may not necessarily be equity, purchasing equity, rather, different structures where they could put capital in and receive, different types of structures than just pure equity. Therefore, we may not need to raise north of 75 if we can bring in other non-dilutive types of financing from some of these strategics that have indicated openness to that type of conversation. Therefore, we gave one of the things that was important to us. If it's a traditional Series C, I think it will be north of 75. I'm not worried about that. If we get lots of non-dilutive financing, we may then choose to bring in some additional equity financing, but less because of this other, support. Therefore, we negotiate into the term sheet this optional conversion, where we would hope that a lot of people would still convert at that price if it's a fair price, even though it isn't necessarily above 75. Okay. Hopefully that's sufficient, Kip, to answer your question. And again, happy if there are people who are seriously considering what they'd like to do in this round, happy to take specific questions about the dynamics of what we're doing within this round and how we're thinking about the next. Okay. I will share. Wait. Let me do. I think you're seeing it in the weird presenter.
Yeah, right? We're seeing the presenter.
Yeah, give me a second. Is that better?
Looks perfect.
Okay, sorry about that. And again, if you've heard me give a talk recently, I apologize if it's a bit repetitive. NFW is really, by a lot of what's happened in the recent months, really looking at an opportunity to not rebrand ourselves. We're still Natural Fiber Welding, we're still NFW, but talk about ourselves with some different language, being the Circularity of Things company. We think there's a really powerful opportunity to differentiate ourselves from any other materials company that's in the market today, alternative materials, or even traditional materials company, because of a couple of really strong commitments and things we've insisted upon in how we develop and bring new materials to market that allow us to talk about a circularity of not only materials, but of the full articles that get made from those materials. So we'll hear more about this theme as I go through the talk, but NFW is talking to our customers and really challenging them to think about their circularity in a new way by positioning ourselves as the Circularity of Things company This slide I'll go through real quick, but just in the same way that we're all very familiar with this language of Internet of Things today, we think that we can have a new sort of way of people thinking about the relationship they have with the items that are in their daily lives and how those things can be circular. This slide across the top starts to talk about then that ecosystem of materials. I sometimes joke when I give this talk that when you have an opportunity to show a picture of Gisele Bundchen wearing your material, then you should put it in your deck as early as possible. The upper left picture is her. She's a brand ambassador for IWC, the watch company, who's a part of the Richemont house of brands. We're partners with both Richemont and then the IWC brand, and the watch that she's wearing has got a Miram watch strap. Miram is also the second circle to the right. That's one of our ingredient brands. Here it's shown in footwear by a brand called Camper. Actually, Camper is in market, H&M is market, Allbirds is in market with footwear. I'm wearing my Allbirds today, but I was wearing my Campers yesterday, and I go back and forth. They're both great. We'll talk more about Miram being in market in a moment. This is, again, sort of categorically different from where we were when we did RB. With Ralph Lauren, our partner, Claris is in market. Claris is our textile technology. We're expanding that rapidly. We have two other ingredient brands that were not ingredient branded last time we probably spoke. One of them is Pliant. That is what we'll call the ingredient brand for our natural outsoles. Any sort of three-dimensional product which we can make, like a shoe outsole, will be branded as Pliant. And then Tunera is an ingredient brand for a foam. We can then strategically think about how we combine these different ingredient branded materials together into articles like shoes, very importantly, but also handbags and other sorts of articles. So those ingredient brands all work well together. The bottom row is some other highlights or sort of recognition that NFW has received recently. The only one I'll highlight, take the time to mention, is this IP award. There's an organization out of Washington, D.C. called IPOEF that each year recognizes globally an inventor of the year award. It's worth mentioning that the criteria of the award is not only the significance of the invention or inventions, it's really a portfolio award, but also how the IP portfolio is constructed. So it's not just that you had a good idea. The review process looks at how you then took your good idea and protected it with intellectual property. The award was given to specifically Luke Haverhals, our CEO and founder, Aaron Amstutz, our CTO, but really you could say to NFW. And I like to mention that so they were the 2022 winners. The 2021 winners are the group of people who invented the mRNA technology that allows us to have COVID vaccines in the world. So if you look at some of the other past winners, there's one award in the world per year, and all of them are very significant, sort of world-changing types of technology. So a very, very significant singular award per year that was granted to NFW just this past month. Just in the past month. A little bit more then about the ecosystem. So a lot of us are familiar with, and we've been talking for a while about Claris and Miram. But I think it's really important to talk about this whole ecosystem of materials. So just by way of review, then Miram is the only zero plastic leather alternative that is in the market today and is scaling globally. Claris is that which is for textiles, the Ralph Lauren polo shirts. There's also footwear in market with Claris. That those two products then are good examples of the value proposition of moisture management that Claris can bring, but also high durability, higher toughness of yarns and fabrics that Claris can bring. And then both of those products in market also over or underscore or are brought over this value proposition of they're both using recycled cotton and then still outperforming what virgin cotton normally can do. Pliant and Tunera are new ingredient brands. They're from the same sort of technology backbone or the same chemistry approach, you could say, of Mirum. Pliant is literally the most sustainable shoe sole ever made. It's the only all natural, only recyclable, only safe to return to nature rubber shoe sole or outsole that is in market, or will be in market next month. We've already shipped our shoe soles out of our factory, but the brand hasn't yet launched the shoe. They will do so next month. Tunera is a foam material that's suitable for midsoles of shoes and other applications. It shares the same sort of sustainability value props that Pliant and Mirum claim. Safe to return to nature, completely free of plastic, all natural, recyclable. But it's a foam product, and that's also the only one of its kind in the market. The coming soon just means from an ingredient brand perspective, but we've already got revenue, small amounts, but already quite significantly increasing this year. Proving our circularity story is the fact that we've discovered with a partner that when you take Mirum scraps, or Pliant or Tunera for that matter, but today we're most manufacturing Mirum. When you take scraps that are made either in our manufacturing process, a sheet that's a little too thick or a little too thin or a little bit off spec on color, for whatever reason, when we have the yield fallout, those scraps are valuable to other people, and they're paying us for those scraps as an amendment to soil to provide a very high performance soil. A very specific application that we're already in and exploring others is high performance horse footing. In a horse arena or a racetrack today, if you go to the racetrack and see a footing material type of soil covering, almost all of them, at least any of the performance ones, have plastics. So we're literally putting plastics into the ground. When the rain is coming down, they're leaching into the earth. There's a strong movement in that market away from synthetics putting them into the ground. And this customer has worked with us to discover that Mirum, because it's all natural, because it's safe to return to nature, and because it has amazing performance properties, our scrap, is their treasure, you could say, and they're willing to pay us kind of, I won't say the number exactly, but a pretty remarkable price per pound for what for us is waste. It's a beautiful economic story, but it's also a beautiful circularity story that underscores how important it is to have made the original fundamental decision to never use any plastics. If you do, you can't do this type of business model that we're executing today with what we call structured dirt or performance dirt. So that's coming. I think in the interest of just, again, this might be repetition for many of you, I'll go very briefly. Here's Mirum, some photos of the color spectrum that we're doing with Mirum. I've talked about a lot of the value propositions. I'll remind the group that from a scaling perspective, what we did last spring with the investment round we did then was put on order a piece of machinery we call a double belt press, which allows us to stop making Mirum just on panels of a given size. Today we make 27 by 28 inch panels, but on a continuous process that allows us to make Mirum on a roll. That machinery has been ordered, has been manufactured, is being, as we speak now, sort of crated up and shipped. Some of the containers have already arrived in Peoria. They'll be arriving sort of over time over the next couple months. This machine is on schedule to be installed, qualified in Q1 of next year, and operational by April of next year. It's a massive piece of machinery. It's a order of magnitude $20 million piece of equipment. I was told they used over 400 tons of steel to make the machine, and it will be installed down at Jefferson and making north of the run rate, which will not be the full year of 2023 because it doesn't start till April and has a ramp up period, but the run rate is on the order of 15 million square feet of Mirum per year once it's running. So Mirum is very much on track. That's the first ingredient brand. Claris is as well.
Hey, Steve.
Yes.
On that, is there a dollar value on that volume?
Yeah. Great question, Kip. Of course, as we scale the volume, the average selling price comes down. Today, we're still averaging north of $6 per square foot. Our model for next year has it closer to $5 per square foot. Over time, it can come lower, but it's okay. We can still make good gross margins. If you think of $4 to $5 a square foot as a price, an average price that'll hold for several years, 15 to 20-ish million square feet generates $60 to $100 million of revenue per year out of that capital investment that costs $20 million. So it's another amazing thing about Mirum, because we're using industry standard machinery and equipment that has been scaled for other industries. We can get very, very good capital efficiency. Our team has run Mirum, I'll say, like on a roll in Germany, where the machine comes from. We've successfully made Mirum on a roll in their machine. We also visited a company in Indiana that makes panels for the walls of RVs using a double belt press from the exact same supplier. So we've learned from them some operational insights, operational tricks, just worked with them on how we think about modeling the cost of operations, how we had our maintenance people talking to their maintenance people. They proved very willing to be a good partner to us. And we have increased confidence both in the financial estimations based on, sort of operational efficiency of that machine. And again, the fact is we'll be selling a premium leather replacement made on a piece of capital that they're very profitable making panels for RVs. So I think we have a better margin story with the type of material we'll make on that. Claris is the textile technology. It's a process that we practice on yarns, but it enables us to make very, very high performance textiles. For example, in the Ralph Lauren polo shirt pictured here, it's compatible with all different fiber types. I think we've said before the word, again, I'll be a little bit loose, though we're not technically under NDA. Please respect the confidentiality of Chanel as a partner who has sponsored work to prove that not only does this work on cotton and other fibers which come from plants, but things like wool, cashmere, and silk fibers which come from animals. So there's a different chemistry in those fibers, but our chemistry works equally well on all of them. And that's now been proven with work we've had sponsored by Chanel. We're going to scale this into supply chain, and we're working with a couple of different partners on who will be the first to scale it. The immediate next scaling step for, again, those in Peoria are interested, up on Pioneer Park, the lease that we signed, we're now installing the equipment that will be the next level of scale of where we make Claris here in Peoria. So that's Claris. Pliant, as I've already said, a sustainable, natural outsole for shoes, can over time evolve into other three-dimensional parts as well. I'll say that the business model here is different from both Mirum and Claris, whereas we will make Mirum as a sheet good and as a roll good in our own factories, and as we will install Claris as a technology and supply chain. Here, if you think about the shoe sole business, almost every shoe has a different sole design, and then it has many different molds because of different shoe sizes. It's a massively parallel sort of manufacturing environment. We will provide the special sauce, you could say, a special ingredient that can be combined with just regular natural rubber. We've already done this in supply chain. So we provide the special sauce, which we create, which we make here in Peoria. We ship it to the molding facility. The first one we used was in the Dominican Republic. We've also qualified at this point one in Portugal, and we'll be running trials in Vietnam before the end of the year, which is where you get to really huge volumes of shoe soles in Vietnam. So we can just provide this ingredient. We do not have to provide, spend the capital to scale up the molding facilities. So we'll make shoe soles in molding facilities already in supply chain by supplying our special ingredient. Foam, today we're making foam as a sheet good, but foam also can be molded. But we can enter markets like midsoles just by making Mirum on sheet goods, which makes it compatible then with the types of equipment that we use to make Mirum. And again, the same sort of value propositions from a sustainability perspective that are true of Mirum and of Pliant as well. Let me just go past that. Ralph Lauren's very interested in buying everything we can make. We have a letter in our data room that says that Ralph Lauren would buy 10 million pounds per year if we could make it for them. And we're working closely with the Ralph Lauren team and shifting that, not just a letter of intent, but an actually contracted offtake agreement. So we know that Ralph Lauren's very, very interested to take everything we can make for them. And they've been really in all ways a tremendous partner to thus far. Another, very key highlight partner for us is Allbirds, of course. They were an investment in our Series A, just following Ralph Lauren by a little bit. The Allbirds shoes just launched last month and have really been tremendous to have in market. The press and the partnership of Allbirds has been really, really strong as well. On this slide, you see a few other brands that have already launched footwear, but you also can see brands like New Balance, Deckers, not mentioned on this slide, but publicly disclosed, Wolverine Worldwide, all have announced publicly an intent to use Mirum and also our other materials as well. New Balance is if everybody doesn't know, just an absolutely massive footwear company. They sell about 150 million pairs per year. If you're not familiar with Deckers, they're the parent brand. Their largest brand is UGG, known for boots, slippers, that kind of footwear. They also own Hoka, which is a very up and coming running shoe brand. Wolverine Worldwide, their largest brand is Merrell. They also own Chaco, Saucony, many other brands. So we're working with all of these brands under Deckers, under Wolverine, and working closely with New Balance. So as we get much, much more scale, Allbirds ends up being a very small brand compared to some of the other brands that'll be in market with Mirum footwear very soon.
Steve, I know they haven't been in market long, but have you had any feedback in terms of, meeting expectations from customers or sales, any of that kind of thing?
Yeah, you know what? I don't have direct sell-through numbers versus expectation, Nathan. That would be nice to have, but maybe as important, maybe more important, is continued increased volume of subsequent orders that we've been receiving from Allbirds. So we continue to get new orders from Allbirds and then fulfill, new and larger orders from Allbirds. So on the business side, things are looking very good with them. Camper has also, by the way, I guess I don't have a picture of the Camper shoe. Some of you may have seen the Camper shoe, but they just launched a single silhouette. Camper is also expanding into additional silhouettes with their shoe and continuing to ask, for reorders of material. So, it's an important point and piece, Kip, that we don't just do, marketing launches that are a couple hundred pairs or something. We're doing thousands of pairs, and then they're asking for tens of thousands of pairs and subsequent even larger orders. And that's definitely been the pattern thus far.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, good question. Thanks, Kip. Okay, so then that's a little bit about footwear. I'll say that I mentioned the brand Chanel already. IWC, these are not they're not extremely important from a volume perspective, but I think they are extremely important from a positioning perspective. These IWC watch bands are beautiful. And Luke and I have been loaned by IWC one of their watches. Neither of us would, they're very expensive, but we've been loaned, and depending on who we're meeting with and who's traveling and where we're going, he and I trade back and forth this IWC watch, which gets a lot of a lot of people are impressed and agree that it's a very beautiful piece, but it does not represent a lot of volume. I will say, though, that when we're negotiating with a partner like BMW, I was in Munich for 3 days last week, meeting all the way up to the top levels of BMW. As we're negotiating with them around price and how our materials are to be positioned within their, various trim levels within BMW and even different vehicles within BMW, my ability to talk about the IWC watch, the work we're doing with Chanel, the work we're doing with several other luxury brands, is very powerful in our positioning and therefore retaining our pricing power over time. I won't say on this call all of the brands we're working with, but I will say that I made it clear to BMW that it was important for me to spend 2 days in Paris on my way to Munich last week, because of the number of luxury brands, based there in Paris that I was able to have meetings with and continue to further our relationships with those brands. So not a huge driver volume wise, but a very powerful halo effect and supportive of our positioning of our materials with brands like BMW and what we think that means for pricing over time. So, okay, so there's pictures of the Campers shoe. There are lots and lots of products in market at this point in time. I get asked by a lot of different people, how can I support NFW? Here today on this call, we're talking about investment, and that's obviously a really critical piece, but another really great way to support NFW is to buy a polo shirt from Ralph Lauren, buy a pair of shoes from Camper, from Allbirds, buy a bag from Bellroy, buy a wallet from Pangaea. Those sorts of things are, of course, very helpful for us as well. And the pipeline continues to grow at a really rapid rate. We're working on automating our ability to process these very small orders from brands to get more of them in market faster. We have over 1,500 brands that are in our CRM that have organically reached out, that are in various stages of, having launched, having prototyped, still making prototypes, still selecting the material they want to prototype with in some cases. That's more than double since where we were at the beginning of this year. So, yeah, traction's very, very strong. Just another word about some of our most important partnerships. BMW, I mentioned I was in Munich for 3 days last week. At November of last year, almost a year ago now, we signed a $2 million development contract with BMW. The existence of that contract, of course, was supportive to us closing our Series B. But since then, what we've done is successfully execute the first 3 of 5 loops, as they call it. I'd call it like phases in a development contract. Each of the first 3 loops completed, to the target, specifications of what that loop was intended to do, and on time. We're in the middle of loop 4 right now. Because we're doing well with that, the conversations in Munich last week are really shifting towards those things I already alluded to. What is the positioning of how they're going to put the Mirum within the vehicles? Which trim levels is it going to be, and how are they going to price it? How are they going to talk about that? There are still a couple of technical specs that we still are needing to meet, but spent time talking about the joint plan to meet those technical specs. And then it comes down to pricing, volume, what they would call industrialization or just scale up. So by spring of next year, if all goes according to plan, we have a commercial purchase order from BMW to place it in the seats what will amount to tens of millions of square feet worth of Mirum over time. So large volume contracts. And then I'll note that within the industry, if you're qualified for BMW seats, you're qualified for every other OEM as well. They do have the opportunity to retain 2 years of exclusivity if they purchase if they commit to purchase next year more than 70 million square feet of Mirum. Again, keep in mind something like $4 to $5 of ASP is a rough number to think about. If they purchase hundreds of millions of dollars of Mirum, then they get to keep exclusivity for 2 years. If they don't, then they have no exclusivity. Unless is a shoe brand that everybody hasn't yet heard of because they haven't yet launched, but is actually Luke and I have made this strategic decision to partner very closely with Unless. You could say we're making a bet on a person, which is Eric Liedtke. He was the former CFO of Adidas. He's the founder and CEO of Unless. They have completely bought into our vision of an entirely natural shoe that is all nutrients and can be safely returned to nature or safely recycled because it has no plastics in the entire shoe. It'll be the first shoe in the world that has the specs that it has. And it uses Claris, Mirum, Pliant, and Tunera in the Impossible shoe that Unless will be launching next month. So we're already we've shipped all of our product. They're in the assembly part of the shoe at this point, and very, very close to having this product in market. Eric is the type of person that we've bet on because we think he's a disruptor in the footwear market. When we first met Eric last year, he told us that he left his position as CMO of Adidas because he couldn't have the impact that he wanted to have in the world from that position. He wanted to do it in a more disruptive way by launching a brand new brand that could take chances and risks and do projects that the big brands could never do. So that's what we've been working on very closely with Eric for the last couple of years. This slide just mentions a little bit about our carbon footprint, which is something we get asked about a lot. Here you see what might be the carbon footprint in terms of kilograms of carbon CO2 emitted per kilogram of material made, where we would describe synthetic leathers there's a lot of different data sources and data sets, but everybody agrees well into the double digits. Many people would describe leather at much, much higher than that. Even what would be considered a sustainable or bio-based polyurethane that's much more expensive tends to be like, again, this data set says 8 kilograms per kilogram. Mirum operates in the range of like 1 to 2 or less than 1, even in some formulations, kilogram per kilogram. So we're, in addition to having an end of life story no one else can tell, in addition to having the performance and a cost structure that's really competitive with these materials, we're something like an order of magnitude lower carbon footprint than the materials that dominate these industries today, real leather and synthetic plastic leathers. Let me mention just another thought or two. If we're thinking about what's happened since our Series B, all of the market traction, products in market that were not there, and then to Kip's very important point, the reorders have accelerated. So revenue is accelerating. I think very importantly, the strategic relationships. I didn't talk in detail about our relationship with Chanel, but that is progressing really well. I did talk about BMW. The most confidential relationship we have is with a consumer electronics brand who cares about sustainability based in the Bay Area that sells us lots of different electronic devices that we use in our lives. They view NFW as a core part of their material platform going forward, have made a significant, just shy of $9 million commitment to NFW, simply to help us develop the materials to their specs. And so I think some of the strongest stories telling that we have just in the last few months is the momentum with these types of brands. We've also had great success in strengthening the leadership team. Most notably on this slide is Rob Salter, who's joined as our CFO. Rob comes to us from 1-800-Flowers, a company that owns many different brands and makes many of their own products, including a lot of food. And maybe some of you know, there's a lot of similarities actually between making Mirum or Pliant or Tunera and making baked goods and bread and those sorts of things. And so Rob's background is perfect for us, and he's been with us about 2 months now, and a tremendous addition to the team. Okay, I note that it's about 7:20. I did skip a few slides, but I think it's the main ideas I've tried to convey. Any questions?
Steve, there was a question that came up in our board meeting yesterday that I'll convey is just thoughts around as you grow and get all these great partners and different brands, like exit or kind of what are you guys looking at or thinking about?
It's a great question, Kip. I think I don't know. You know, it's a funny thing, right? When you guys are doing what you're doing and you're talking to a lot of companies, if you talk to NFW in 2017 or 2018, and I say, well, I mean, our exit is to IPO, then you probably look at me a little bit funny and like, really, Steve, is that realistic? At this point, that is the exit strategy for NFW. We have done benchmarking against numerous companies that are multi-billion dollar, in some cases already IPO'd, or other sorts of companies who do not have anywhere near our market traction, who do not have near the breadth of market traction in any one of the markets that we're working in, much less the portfolio of markets and the ability to work with our customers at the entire product level. I think everybody realizes the strength of being able to sell all of those different components in a differentiated from other competitors, but synergistic way. So once we sell Mirum to somebody in the upper, the sale of the shoe sole material got way easier. Once we sold the shoe sole and the foam to certain brands, the Mirum got way easier. So we're really getting to sort of a lock-in position with some of our partners. We're going after multiple. Maybe I omitted some of these slides from like a very, very like thorough standard investor deck, but it's worth saying the leather market, the synthetic leather market, is a $150 billion market. We're completely differentiated from anybody else in the space. The textiles industry that Clarus is addressing is even larger. Rubber shoe soles represents like a $30 billion market by itself. NFW can have multiple, relatively soon hundreds of millions of dollar businesses, and with like the structured dirt concept, we're looking at creating a new business line that can be hundreds of millions of dollars. There's markets that people like myself and probably all of us on this call never spend any time thinking about, but as I've learned a lot more about it, the market size of horse footing in the United States alone is between $5 and $10 billion per year. And our customer has a completely differentiated value proposition because of what Mirum scrap is doing for them, and being able to be free of plastic. And I'm not going to make it into a sales pitch for their product, but also very differentiated from a water use perspective. They are very aggressively looking to grow in that market, and already growing rapidly with some of our early scrap. So Kip, to answer your question very directly, I think it's an IPO. When we think about a very large Series C, as I described before, there's no reason why that large round, the correlation that you tend to see between size of round and valuation. Part of when I say $100 plus $150 million round, it's thinking about the types of valuations that companies get when they have those types of rounds, and we think that's where we should be looking to go. And then that could be the last equity round we ever do. Probably is, other than an IPO, because the vision is that at that point in time, either, depending on how fast you grow, either you've hit a point where you're cash flow positive, generating gross margin dollars to fund your growth, or at that point you're just borrowing money.
Right.
So yeah, that's the plan.
Okay. Thank you.
I won't say a timeline of IPO, Kip. Too many things will change in markets to try to put a finger on that. But that would be the exit.
Perfect. Thank you.
Steve, I have a question. What have been some of your staffing challenges over the past year?
Yeah, there are some, Nathan, and we didn't highlight the fact that down at Jefferson, the way we make Mirum today is in a pretty manual process, and it has been a challenge to get the number of workers and then retain the quality of workers and the quality of attention to detail in a manual process down at Jefferson. Again, not to underscore, but the roll-to-roll process is really important because it gets us to a more automated process. By the way, we should also not worry that NFW is going to lay off all of the workers in the manual process today. We'll retain basically the same number of workers that we're running today, and use them to increase by more than a factor of 10 the output. So we'll have plenty of jobs for those of us who are worried about keeping good job employment numbers in Peoria. But it's been a challenge, Nathan, to your point. We've increased our hourly rate a couple times already over the past year, to try to just get the best. And it's a challenge. We're having good success in recruiting more on the professional ranks. And I've talked other times about our success in getting people to relocate to Peoria when we need them to. I had these numbers in my head a couple of weeks ago. I think 9% of our professional workforce at this point is remote, 91% is in Peoria. And I think it was roughly a third of the people who live in Peoria of the salaried professional workforce have moved to Peoria actually it's like high 20s% of our salaried professional workforce has relocated to Peoria to work here. So we have in the industry of sustainable materials, in the apparel space, in the footwear space, we have a reputation at this point that allows us to attract the best talent. Even if they didn't, if they're not born and raised in Peoria like me, we can get them here and we can get them working on our team. So that side has, I would say, generally speaking, gone well. It has been on the hourly workforce where I don't know, we're trying to get as creative as we can to do as well as we can, but it's been a challenge.
Yeah,
Okay.
big picture, one more question, sorry.
Yeah.
In a big picture sense, besides investment, what can Peoria do to help you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I think investment is, of course, like at the top of the list. I'm not joking when I say if people in Peoria want to help NFW, go buy a pair of Allbirds or go buy a Ralph Lauren polo or buy a wallet from Belroy or Pangaea, or on our Instagram page, we have links to all the different brands that are selling our products today. Nathan, we're maybe some of the people on the call know Ross Black. Ross was assistant city manager in Peoria for a very long time, and now he's an NFW employee. He brings a skill set to the team that I've never had, and frankly, we haven't had in the team, which is a deep understanding of how sort of public-private partnerships can work. I've had many, I joke, like I've had over the past 5 years, people from the city, from the county, from the state, from the federal government, elected officials, appointed officials, every form of government you can imagine has come through NFW. And they have said to me, gosh, Steve, this looks wonderful. How can we help? And then we have this awkward, like, I don't know, how can you help? And how do we work together? Ross understands it deeply. He has allowed us to increase our communication and the specificity of our communication with folks on city council, with Mayor Ali, with our county board members, state representatives, state senators. We've been doing a lot of that work in the last several weeks to move towards, I'll say, like Nathan, a real estate strategy that's more intentional than we've been able to execute so far. It's not by design, other than just by necessity, that I'm sitting in one of 4 NFW buildings at this point in time. We've been growing really fast, but let's be honest, we're not a large enough company that we should have 4 different buildings in Peoria, but we do. We'd like to do some consolidation. We'd like to do some more intentional real estate. We'd like to look at increasing both our manufacturing and R&D and sort of headquarters like footprint. And that's a lot of the conversation that we're trying to drive with Peoria as a partnership to really cement our presence here in town. That's more of like on the public side, what Peoria can do to help. What the CIA group can do is, I don't know, support. So it's a small community. We all know each other, but support those people who are looking to support us in those ways. That's the main things I can think of right now, Nathan. Good question. Thanks for asking.
Thank you.
Okay. If there aren't other questions, Nathan and Kip, I can provide you guys a term sheet, and let's stay in close communication on timing if there's interest from the group in sort of making sure we know what the size of that interest might be. And I'm obviously working closely with another number of other investors, and I'll keep you guys posted, but do the best you can to keep me posted. I'll provide you the term sheet for those who are interested.
Appreciate that. And I know we've already had a number of people who have expressed interest. So as soon as we can exchange details, I think we'll be able to wrap things up relatively quickly.
Okay. I think I said, Nathan, maybe before we were all on the call, the close doesn't need to happen right away. We have time to get to close. We're still working on definitive docs, and there's at least a couple, probably 3 or 4 weeks before we're looking to close, but we will be looking to sort of have an indication of size as soon as possible.
Okay, understood.
Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening.
Yeah,
We'll
thanks,
talk to
Steve.
y'all soon.
Congrats on all the success.
Thanks, Kip. Appreciate it. Thank you
Yeah.
all. All right.
Good
Bye-bye.
night.
Good night.